Part 2. A Sicilian Curse. Begin with Ceres, and her loss, and how from out the earth all of a sudden evil rose. And Aetna had its part in this. Encelades was the Titan's name, or some said Typhon. Either way, amid the struggles of the gods, Athena caught and pressed him down beneath the weight of Aetna's heights. Desiring still to rise to heaven, the demon struggled in his bonds, and raged and screamed so fire and smoke and tremblings deep beneath the earth, in what was also Vulcan's forge, at unexpected times broke forth. Within Tartarian depths, and far remote, from sunlight and the fields above, upon his throne of darkness now and then, even Hades took offense and felt alarm, enough to draw him up to inspect the pillars and balance of the earth. It was at Enna in the spring that earth, being shaken, opened up and steeds of wrathful Hades galloped forth, nor did they stop until the god who drove his dusky chariot alone glimpsed from afar a radiant maiden, Proserpine, carefree, at play, and gathering violets in a grove. She, although herself divine as Ceres' child, was not yet strong against the will of Venus, and her son who bore his arrows and, as ordered, shot the girl to leave her victim to those powers of love, till then it seemed she might reject, or else she was too young to know. And so it was that Hades snatched the maiden's innocence, and thought it love. His victim screamed in terror, and she called repeatedly for Ceres to aid, and yet, though she resisted, due to Cupid's dart, she somewhat loved her rapist too, and passed below, where soon she would be honored as the Hell King's queen. But not before the underworld's mad steeds, as though enraptured by the violence, still rushed across and round the trembling isle, and by a pool where Sicily's nymph, Cyane, in vain protested at the crime, and wept. So great was Hades' wrath at that, he threw his scepter in her pool, returning to his home from there, while she dissolved into her tears, and her no longer sacred place, until she was but silent water. Meanwhile, and soon, Ceres, to whom no child return, began to fear, to grow in anger and to mourn, and, tossed like waves at sea in her distress, set out to search the whole wide world. First Sicily, then that island last, and at the pool where now Cyane was only voiceless water, she saw, just as the sorry nymph intended, the maiden's girdle floating free. Here was the proof the island held her daughter still. But Ceres, while she quested on, grew more enraged and bitter at the Sicilian earth. With no child found, and seeking vengeance evermore in grief, and comfortless this mother caused all natural gifts of fruit and grain to be withheld. So round about whole deserts spread as fields were wilted, blackened, and a blighted earth fell barren of its previous life. At Arethusa's fountain, there alone, it was that earth gained some reprieve. The nymph, who now loved Sicily as her home, made plea to set harsh punishment aside, assured the troubled mother that the very land opposed the crime to which it was the sad, reluctant witness, and, from what she's glimpsed beneath the earth where Hades bore his bride away, there was no doubt. It was the Dark Lord surely did the deed. At first, struck dumb, the anguished mother soon resolved to take her outrage to the courts of Zeus, rose there in haste, and stood upon Olympus's heights. But Zeus was torn between the claims on him of his own sister and a brother too, and what his sister called vile theft to him seemed more like love gone half astray. But witness to so great distress with consequences for the world, his will allowed his niece could be returned to the maternal home, except this boon was now impossible. Within the realms of hell its king had given his spouse to eat, and once a soul, even one divine, had taken of food outside the world, there they must stay, and there belong. So Zeus decreed a compromise that half the year the girl might spend some time on earth, and every spring she could return. which is what many have believed. And it is true that every spring the sun gives light and heat, and violets blow first and more early in Europa's fields in Sicily than anywhere else. But even so, some curse still lurked and whispered to the land. And that same sun that spreads on Enna's walls would see the challenge to that city's rule. Conflict repeated and oppression too, where it now stands athwart the island's center. And to the north still Etna groaned and spat and had no mercy on a man, except its slopes at rest gave honey. It swallowed up even Empedocles, who, the last philosopher to write in verse, defined the fundamental elements and thought all change results alone from strife and love in their perpetual motion. Strife with gods and elements he met, when seeking proof for his divinity, into a fiery crater of the mountain's side himself he flung and was consumed. It is as though in Etna's shadow lie heaven and hell. There sky and earth cannot agree, and from their violent colors, violent ways, like poisoned flowers, and out of Vulcan's forge and from the Titan's jail arise the retribution that lays waste. But to the south rose Syracuse, whose bays face eastward, to the sea and Greece, and do not look to, nor are overseen by any mountain or dread Typhon's place. There, even if a tyrant ruled, the light of day could still be hailed like so much radiance of reason's rule, the blessing of Athena's aid on every thinking citizen. But darkness hides in many forms, sometimes even most and longest in the light, and always there is love and strife.